Most women have no idea that the way they hug a man can reveal exactly how they feel about him, even when their words are saying something completely different. Not what she says, not how she looks, not even the conversation they just had. It can be that one simple hug. That one small moment can communicate more than she realizes. And here's the interesting part. The women who naturally get this right are usually not doing anything complicated. They are simply avoiding the little mistakes that so many women make without ever noticing them. Those mistakes can quietly destroy the feeling of connection before the man even has time to understand what is happening. I want you to really think about that for a moment, because most of us have heard the same advice our entire lives. Be yourself, smile, be confident. And yes, all of that is useful, but almost nobody ever explains what actually happens inside a man when a woman hugs him. Nobody explains what he may feel physically in those first few seconds, what makes him naturally want to stay close, or what can make him instinctively create distance. Nobody really teaches you that part. So if you've been getting this wrong, don't blame yourself. How were you supposed to know? In this video, we're going to look at 3 common types of hugs women give all the time that can slowly push a man away, even when she genuinely likes him. And I'm talking about good women, intelligent women, women who actually want something meaningful with the man. Yet these small behaviors can still send the wrong message without her realizing it. Then we're going to get to the 4th kind of hug. The one people rarely talk about, the one that can stay in his mind long after the moment has passed. The kind that can make him remember you the next morning when he's sitting quietly and suddenly that little moment comes back to him. Stay with me, because that final part is where everything starts to make much more sense. Before we get into those mistakes, there's one important thing you need to understand, because it is the foundation for everything else we're talking about. Men often feel something before they consciously understand it. A lot of women assume a man decides whether he likes someone based mostly on what she says, how interesting the conversation was, how funny she is, or how much they have in common. And of course, those things matter. But during those first moments of physical contact, his body may already be responding to signals before his conscious mind has even processed them. Is she comfortable around me? Does she feel relaxed with me? Does she actually want to be close to me? Does this feel natural for her? Or does it feel like she's simply being polite? Those questions can be answered through body language before a person ever says them out loud. That's not about some complicated trick or secret formula. It's simply part of being human. We naturally notice physical signals very quickly. A hug, therefore, is not just a hug. It can become a quiet form of communication. It can show warmth, comfort, nervousness, distance, excitement, or uncertainty without a single word being spoken. And the difference between a hug that creates a feeling of closeness and one that creates distance can be incredibly small. But that small difference can still matter. Think about the last time someone hugged you and you could instantly tell they were genuinely happy to see you. You didn't have to study their body language. You didn't need to ask them what they were feeling. You simply knew. Now remember the opposite kind of hug. The quick, polite embrace where you could almost sense that the other person was already thinking about what they had to do next. You felt that immediately too. That's the same kind of thing that can happen when you hug a man. He isn't sitting there judging every little movement. His body is simply responding to the experience. And that is why what happens during those few seconds can be more meaningful than you might expect. So what you do with your body during those first few seconds can make a difference. Not because men are secretly keeping a checklist in their heads, not because you need to perform some perfect technique, but because physical contact communicates differently from words. Most people were never taught how to understand that language. They simply learned through experience. And this is where women sometimes make a mistake. They try so hard to avoid looking too interested that they accidentally communicate the opposite of what they actually feel. They think they are protecting themselves. They think they are being calm. They think they are avoiding coming across as too eager, but sometimes the message that reaches him is completely different. And if you're wondering why a man seemed interested one moment and then became distant afterward, don't immediately assume you did something terrible or that there is something wrong with you. Sometimes the smallest interaction can create confusion when two people are reading the moment differently. If this is already making you rethink a few moments from your own life, stay with me, because the next 3 examples are where this becomes especially clear. And before we continue, if you've ever found yourself wondering why a man suddenly became less warm after a seemingly normal interaction, hit the like button. This kind of relationship psychology is worth talking about because sometimes the smallest details are the ones we completely overlook. Let's start with the first mistake. It's the kind of hug almost everyone has done at some point, and most people don't even realize what it can communicate. You move toward him, your arms go around him, and then you start patting his back. Pat, pat, pat. Almost like you're comforting someone who just had a difficult day. And yes, it sounds funny when you describe it that way, but stop and think about the message behind that movement. A gentle pat on the back is something we often do when we're trying to comfort someone. We might do it with a friend who is upset. We might do it with a relative we aren't particularly close to. We might even do it automatically because we don't know what else to do with our hands. There's nothing wrong with the gesture itself. The problem is that it can sometimes create a sense of emotional distance. Instead of feeling like a warm moment between two people who are happy to be close, it can feel more formal, more polite, almost like you're saying, okay, we're done here. And again, you may not mean that at all. Maybe you're nervous, maybe you feel awkward, maybe you're worried about making the moment too intimate. Maybe you've simply developed the habit over the years. But he doesn't have access to all those thoughts inside your head. He only experiences the hug itself. And if the hug feels stiff, distant, or overly controlled, that may be the feeling he remembers. I've heard men describe experiences like this in very simple terms. They might say, I don't know, something just felt off. When you ask them what they mean, they often struggle to explain it. They might say, she seemed uncomfortable, or it felt like she wanted to leave before the hug even started. That's the problem with this type of hug. It feels completely harmless from your side, but it can sometimes communicate a level of distance you never intended to send. The second mistake is what I would call the rushed hug. This is the hug that barely has time to become a hug. You make contact, your arms touch, and almost immediately you're already moving backward. The entire thing might last less than a second. And again, there are perfectly understandable reasons women do this. Maybe you're somewhere crowded, maybe you're nervous, maybe you don't know how long you're supposed to stay there. Maybe you're afraid that if you hold the hug for too long, he'll think you're trying too hard. Maybe you simply want to appear relaxed and independent. But here's where things can become confusing. What you intended to communicate and what he actually experiences may be two completely different things. You might think you're saying, I'm confident, I'm not desperate, I'm completely comfortable. But he may simply feel she's not really interested. That's it. His mind doesn't necessarily go through every possible explanation for why you pulled away quickly. He doesn't know that you were nervous. He doesn't know that you were trying to look calm. He doesn't know that you were secretly hoping he would hold on a little longer. He only knows what happened. Contact, then distance. And sometimes the brain makes a very quick interpretation from that. Quick exit can feel like low interest. And here's the frustrating part. Many women actually do this because they like the man. They're trying not to appear too eager. They're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to play it cool. But there is a problem with that strategy. From the outside, being emotionally controlled and being emotionally uninterested can look almost identical. You know what you're feeling inside, but he doesn't. So while you're thinking, I'm just trying to stay calm, he may be walking away thinking, she seems nice, but I don't think she's feeling the same connection. And you may never realize that the message was sent.
Now we get to the third mistake, and honestly, this may be the one that causes the most quiet damage because it can happen without you even realizing you're doing it. I call it the checked out hug. This is when your body is physically there, but your attention isn't really there. You hug him, but your mind is somewhere else. You're thinking about what happened 5 minutes ago. You're wondering who is watching. You're thinking about what you're going to say next. You're checking your surroundings. You're worrying about how you look. You're already preparing yourself to move away. And even though your arms are around him, there is no real presence behind the moment. This is important because genuine connection isn't only about physical contact. It's about attention. When someone is fully present with you, you can usually feel it. You don't need them to say, I'm present right now. Their body communicates it for them. But when someone is distracted, tense, or mentally somewhere else, that can also be felt. The hug may technically happen, but emotionally it never really lands. And this is especially easy to do when you're nervous around someone you actually like. You become so focused on yourself that you forget to experience the moment. You're wondering, am I standing correctly? Did I hold him too long? Should I let go now? What is he thinking? Did that seem awkward? Suddenly, the entire experience becomes a performance instead of a connection. And that's when the hug can feel strangely empty. He may not know exactly why it felt different. He may not even consciously notice the details. But he can leave with a subtle feeling that something was missing. That's what makes this one so powerful. It's not dramatic, it's not obvious. There is no big mistake that either person can point to. It's simply the absence of presence. And if you've ever looked back on an interaction and thought, why did that feel so awkward when nothing actually went wrong? This could be part of the answer. Sometimes nothing bad happened. The problem is that nothing emotionally connected happened either. That's a very different thing. And I want you to understand this because the solution isn't to become an expert at hugging or to start analyzing every movement you make around a man. That's not the point at all. The point is to stop trying so hard to control the moment that you completely miss the moment. When you like someone, it's natural to become self-conscious. It's natural to wonder how you're being perceived. But connection becomes much easier when you allow yourself to actually experience the person in front of you. You don't need to create some perfect impression. You don't need to calculate every second. You don't need to wonder whether your hug lasted exactly the right amount of time. What matters far more is whether the interaction feels genuine. And this is where we finally get to the part most people never explain. The kind of hug that stays in someone's memory isn't necessarily the longest hug. It isn't some dramatic embrace from a movie. It isn't about squeezing harder or holding on for an exaggerated amount of time. It's about what the other person feels during it. There is warmth. There is ease. There is a sense that for those few seconds, you aren't trying to prove anything. You're simply there. And that feeling can be surprisingly powerful because people remember how you made them feel far more often than they remember the exact words you used. So when you see him, instead of thinking about how you're supposed to hug him, allow yourself to recognize the moment. Let your body be relaxed. Let the interaction happen naturally. If you genuinely feel happy to see him, don't immediately hide that feeling out of fear that you'll look too interested. You don't have to overdo anything. You don't need to turn a simple hug into some giant romantic statement. Just stop fighting the natural warmth
that is already there. That's what makes a difference. Because sometimes the most attractive thing you can communicate is not desire, confidence, or mystery. It's comfort. It's the feeling that you don't need to protect yourself from every small moment of closeness.
And that can create something very different inside the other person. Instead of wondering, does she even want me here? He may simply feel, she feels good around me. And that is a powerful shift. But remember, none of this is about manipulating a man or using a hug as some secret technique to make him fall for you. That's not what this is. A hug can't manufacture genuine feelings that aren't already there. What it can do is remove some of the unnecessary confusion that comes from nervousness, distance, or trying too hard to appear unaffected. And if you've been making one of these mistakes, don't beat yourself up over it. You weren't given a manual for this. Most people weren't. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is awareness. Once you understand what you're communicating, you can finally start making choices that actually match what you feel. And here's the part I really want you to remember. You don't need to become a different woman to create a better connection with a man. You don't need to memorize 100 rules. You don't need to study every gesture or constantly wonder whether you're doing enough. Sometimes the biggest change comes from removing the fear that makes you hold yourself back. If you genuinely enjoy being around him, let some of that warmth exist. If you're happy to see him, you don't have to hide every trace of it. If the moment feels comfortable, you don't have to rush away simply because you're worried about appearing too interested. And if you're nervous, that's okay too. Being nervous doesn't make you unattractive. It makes you human. What matters is whether you can slowly stop letting that nervousness control every interaction. Because when two people genuinely connect, the most memorable moments are often the quiet ones. The greeting, the smile, the brief pause before leaving, the hug that lasted only a few seconds but somehow felt different from all the others. Those are the moments that can stay with someone, not because they were perfectly executed, but because they were real. So the next time you hug someone you genuinely care about, don't turn it into a test. Don't ask yourself whether you're doing it correctly. Don't mentally step outside yourself and watch the interaction from the sidelines. Just be there. Be present. Let the moment happen. And you may be surprised by how much more powerful a simple hug can become when you stop trying to control what it means and simply allow it to communicate what you already feel. This is what happens when your body is right there, but your mind is somewhere completely different. Maybe you're already thinking about what you're going to say next. Maybe you're worried about who is watching. Maybe you're feeling a little awkward or self-conscious. Or maybe you're simply trapped inside your own thoughts, quietly worrying about how you're being seen. The hug happens. Technically, you're hugging him, but emotionally, you're not really inside the moment. Your body is present, but your attention has already wandered somewhere else. And here's what I really want you to understand about this one. A man can feel that. In the same simple human way any of us can feel when another person isn't fully present. There's nothing mysterious about it. When someone gives you their full attention, even for 3 or 4 seconds, you can feel the difference immediately. Compare that with someone who is simply going through the motions. The physical action may look exactly the same from the outside, but the feeling is completely different. We've all experienced both. We've all had a hug where someone felt completely connected to us, and we've also had one where it felt like they were already thinking about something else. Your body notices before your mind finds the words. And this is where many women misunderstand what happened afterward. They might say, I was so nervous that night. I was completely inside my head. I couldn't relax. Then they're confused when the interaction later feels slightly strange or distant. But the important thing is that he may have felt that tension too. He may not know why.
He may not be able to explain it. He just knows that something about the moment felt different. And here's the part that can really hurt. He doesn't necessarily think maybe she was nervous, maybe she had a stressful day, maybe she was thinking about me so much that she didn't know how to act. He may simply experience the feeling as she wasn't really with me. Even if that conclusion is completely wrong, even if you were thinking about him the entire evening, even if you cared more than you wanted to admit, if the physical moment felt empty, that may be the message his brain quietly stores away. And that can influence how comfortable he feels around you afterward. Not because he's deliberately judging you, not because he's keeping some secret scorecard. It's simply because people respond to how an interaction makes them feel. That's why the checked out hug can be so damaging. Nothing dramatic happens. Nobody argues. Nobody says anything wrong. There is no obvious mistake to point at, but something small gets lost. And that small feeling can follow both people into the next interaction. The same thing happens with the other two mistakes we talked about. The back pat, the rushed exit, the mentally absent hug. These things happen every single day between people who genuinely like one another, people who could actually have something meaningful. And because nobody thinks to connect the later distance back to that tiny moment, the real cause often goes unnoticed. Now, this is where things get interesting, because there is a much better way to handle that moment. And it doesn't require a trick, a strategy, or some complicated technique. The kind of hug that stays in someone's memory is not about performing the perfect move. It isn't something you put on like a costume. It doesn't require you to become more mysterious, more confident, or more attractive than you already are. It's actually much simpler. It's about being genuinely present for a few seconds and allowing your body to communicate what you already feel. That's really it. When you break it down, the idea is almost surprisingly simple. When you move toward him for the hug, move as though you've actually decided that you want to hug him. Not dramatically, not like you're creating some huge romantic scene, just with enough intention that your body isn't sending mixed signals. You're choosing the moment instead of simply reacting to it. Your arms go around him naturally, with enough pressure that he can actually feel that you're there, not a hard squeeze that makes him uncomfortable, not something forced, just real contact. There's an important difference between physically touching someone and making someone feel your presence. That difference doesn't come from doing more, it comes from being more intentional. You aren't trying to create a reaction in him, you're simply allowing yourself to actually participate in the moment instead of standing outside it and analyzing yourself. And if you're nervous, that's okay. You don't have to eliminate every nervous feeling. You simply don't want your nervousness to control the entire interaction. This is where one tiny detail becomes much more powerful than most people realize. And trust me, don't skip this part because it may be the easiest change you can make. Breathe. That's it. Take one slow, natural breath while you're in the hug. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but it can completely change the feeling of the moment. When you breathe slowly, your body begins to relax, your shoulders soften, your muscles stop bracing, your mind becomes quieter. And when your body becomes more relaxed, the other person can often feel that change too. Human beings naturally respond to the emotional state of the person they're close to. If you're tense, holding your breath, waiting for the moment to end, and silently counting the seconds until you can pull away, that tension can become part of the hug. But if you take one real breath and allow yourself to simply be there, the experience becomes much warmer. You don't have to force closeness. You don't have to think about whether you're doing enough. You're simply allowing the moment to exist. And that small breath can be the difference between a hug that feels like a social obligation and one that feels like genuine connection. Think about how different it feels when someone hugs you while their entire body is relaxed compared with someone who feels stiff and distracted. You can sense it immediately. That's why this matters. It isn't about some secret psychological trick. It's about the most basic signal of comfort your body can give. I'm okay being here with you. And when that feeling is genuine, you don't need to explain it. The other person experiences it directly. So if you're ever nervous during a moment like this, don't immediately try to fix everything. Don't start calculating what your hands are doing or wondering how many seconds have passed. Just breathe. Let your body settle. You may be surprised by how much changes when you stop trying to control every little detail.
And then comes the ending. This part is far more important than most people realize, because the final second often becomes the feeling that lingers after the hug is over. A lot of women begin pulling away before the hug has actually finished. Their body is already leaving while their hands are still technically there. It's almost like they've mentally stepped backward before they've physically done it. Instead, allow yourself to stay for one tiny beat longer than you normally would. Not an awkward amount of time, not so long that it becomes uncomfortable, just long enough to let the moment actually finish. There's a huge difference between ending a hug because the moment naturally ended and ending it because you're already trying to escape the possibility of looking too interested. That tiny pause can change the entire feeling. Suddenly, you're not the person who was already halfway out the door. You're the person who was fully present until the moment was naturally complete. And that lands differently. When you finally pull away, don't make it abrupt. Let your arms release naturally. Let your hands move away gently. Don't jerk yourself backward as though you've suddenly remembered that you have somewhere more important to be. Give the moment a calm ending, because even though it lasts only a second, that ending becomes part of what he remembers. Then take one small moment to look at him. Not some dramatic movie stare, not a fake smile you've practiced, just a real look. A simple expression that says without words, "I'm glad I was here with you." If you genuinely enjoy being around him, that look doesn't cost you anything. And sometimes it communicates more than a long conversation ever could. This is one of those details that people overlook because it seems too small. But keep watching, because the reason it works has almost nothing to do with the hug itself. I've heard people describe moments like this years later. They'll remember a hug that lasted only a few seconds. They won't necessarily remember every word that was spoken that night. They may not remember exactly what they were wearing or what was happening around them, but they'll remember how that person made them feel. And when they try to explain it, they'll often say something simple like, "I don't know, she just made me feel completely comfortable." Or for those few seconds, it felt like nothing else mattered. When you look closely at those moments, there's usually no complicated secret behind them. She wasn't trying to create an effect. She wasn't performing. She wasn't thinking about how to make him remember her. She was simply there. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't distracted. She allowed the moment to feel natural. And when it ended, she looked at him instead of immediately turning away. That's often the entire difference. It's not magic, it's presence. And that's something almost anyone can create. You don't need a perfect body. You don't need perfect confidence. You don't need to know exactly what a man is thinking. You simply need to stop fighting the moment you're actually experiencing. Because here's something about attraction that rarely gets explained clearly. Real attraction isn't usually built through huge dramatic events. It's built through small moments that feel real. A look, a smile, a laugh that wasn't forced, a quiet conversation, a warm greeting, a brief touch, a hug where both people were actually there. These moments may seem insignificant while they're happening, but they slowly build an emotional experience. One moment connects to another, and over time, those tiny moments can create something much stronger than any carefully planned gesture.